If you think my castle is built on sand, well, bring on the tide, because you can fuck off and die. This is Charlie Murder. We're throwing chairs at it this week. It's from Ska Studios, ported by the lovely, sexy Flibitijibibo, Mr. Ethan Lee. It's on the FNA engine, effing right. You can pick it up for around 10 of your local wet, stinky currencies. And what is it? It's a punk rock apocalypse. A punk rockalypse. Team up with your friends. Lead in battered punk rock band Charlie Murder in their epic quest to save the world from rival death metalers Gore Quaffer and their legions of evil. So let's kick off the chairquisition. We got the 1 chair is garbage, 2 chairs is meh, 3 chairs is pretty good, 4 chairs is great. And we got our categories of doom mixed with the working shiny sounds, controls, and fun. So let's kick this off. Then, Charlie Murder, did it work?
Well, yes, kind of maybe. If I put my hood on, maybe I could think correctly. Let's see if this helps out.
Heresy!
I know. Everything's been fouled to death and back. Over here on the Ubuntu 1604. Running the old antiquated octa-core 8150, powered by a 980 NVIDIA card displayed at UHD 3840 by 2160. Check this out, man. I mean, like with most things from Flibitijibibo, yeah, ran without a hitch in single player. Because unfortunately, as our 2 playthroughs that were both streamed live, turns out that multiplayer is still something that rhymes with a hot mess. More about that in the fun section, definitely. So, here's the thing. If you're going to be playing multiplayer, you're going to have issues. Single player, wicked smooth. No problem. So, you know, I can't give it 4, absolute none. Can't give it 3 because, you know, one of the featured, you know, advertised features of the game doesn't work. But I can give it 2 because there's nothing groundbreaking, game-breaking in this business.
Oh yeah, no, there'll be bugs. Oh yeah, oh yes. Local multiplayer actually works fine, but you know, because we're all a bunch of recluses who live on the internet and have no friends in meat space, the only place that we can play video games with other humans is on the interwebs. So it's kind of a feature that you'd want, especially like Ben said, if you're going to be advertising it. So on Fedora 24, 64-bit, with the i7-6700K, GTX 980, and even on the A10-5800K APU with the GTX 750 Ti, it ran acceptably well. But those multiplayer bugs, man, as fun as it is to beat the crap out of Ben and get the crap kicked out of me, it's still going to get you 2 chairs.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with online multiplayer is the fact that the game originally, when it came out for the Xbox 360, did not support online multiplayer. It was local only. So I'm guessing that's also the reason why the port took Flibit about 3 months-ish, give or take. So yeah, there are bugs when it comes to the online multiplayer, and to Flibit's credit, he spent like the night after the game was released, he was up all night just pushing bugs, just fixing everything. And if you go to their Steam discussion forums, you can actually see like there were like 10 or 11 different changelog entries for every single time that he pushed a bug that night. So for me, on my end, with the FX8370E and the GTX 1080, I didn't have any issues in single player, but multiplayer was very much bugged. So I'll give it 3 chairs.
All right, well, that's 2 chairs for Mix with the Working. Up next is the Shiny and the Sounds. Ven, what's up?
Hey, man, you know what? This comes from the Sultan Sanctuary human beings. I was never a huge fan of the aesthetics of Sultan Sanctuary, but for whatever reason, I can kind of dig this. It's a hand-drawn beat-em-up, so I'm kind of sold on that. My only real complaints, sometimes it's a wee bit too easy if you're looking in the video right now to lose track of your character. And kind of like what we were talking about Thursday, the soundtrack, it might have been before we went live, is definitely something you can put in the background and chill out with it at home. It's nothing to write home about, but it's nothing to cut down and replace with Slayer. You can kind of bob along with it. And again, I'm not saying the soundtrack's great, but it gets the job done. It's completely inoffensive. Outside of that, hey, it has punching noises, it has kicking noises, it has smashing noises, and they are all sufficiently squishy. So what this game is going for, the visual look of it, mixed with the background noise, with the actual gameplay itself, I'll wrap it up in the fun, but for what it was going for, I think it absolutely nailed it. So I don't feel bad at all giving it a solid 4.
Yeah, no, the soundtrack is all right. Acceptable crust punk is acceptable. And the aesthetic matches the narrative really, really well. I always like hand-drawn art. I was a big fan of it with Hollow Knight. And I am a fan of it here. Yeah, going just to harp on a point that Ven had with the losing your character. A lot of it has to do with like the layering system, I find, because sometimes there isn't really a good distinction between the foreground and the background, and you'll be walking up an incline and your character will be clipping through that, and it's kind of weird. And I think that definitely contributes to some of the jank with that, especially with losing your characters, because people will come in from the foreground to cover you up, and then you can't see it, especially when they like to corner fuck you. Again, I'll get to that in the fun section. But I mean, I got to the point where they were where you have to fight the pirates, and there was a Linux user there. So do you think they know? Do you think they're onto us? Anyways, this gets 3 cheers.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of the art style in itself. I'm not a big fan of it in Salt and Sanctuary either, and I like that game very much, but the art style, you can tell that it was done by the same person, and I mean, for all my bitching about it, at least in Charlie Murder, this particular art style fits the theme really, really well. So it's not absolutely getting ding chairs for that. In fact, if I had to point out one issue with the visuals, besides losing track of your character, I'd say sometimes it's a bit hard to tell whether your punches, kicks, spells, whatever, will hit the enemy when they're slightly above or below you in that weird 2D plane. But it does get dinged a chair for the repetitive background music in some of the stages. It's not all of them, but it was enough that I just said, nope, can't deal with it. Options menu, mute the music. And it's kind of loud too. The very first time you start the game, it just does that really annoying background music for the main menu, and I was not a big fan of that. So since you're making me mute the background music, you only get 3 chairs.
Pedro doesn't understand that you're supposed to listen to punk music at a fairly loud volume. But anyways, that's 3 chairs for Shiny and the Sounds. Up next is the controls, Ven.
Hey, check it out. It's something that was meant to originally be played with the Xclone controller, and then it just so happens that I have an Xclone controller. Everything's mapped. It's a Flibit port. Everything can be remapped out of the box. If you're going to have a little complaint, your jump and grab buttons need to be switched. I just kind of had to do that. I mean, you could even watch, I was laughing at Jordan. I was like, yeah, Jordan's doing the same thing. He's trying to pick that up and he's jumping. Wouldn't you take care of that? But you just remap them as you can. Everything's logically laid out. I push a button, it moves. I don't expect wicked tight controls. They're not loose by any means. It's just Hollow Knight has fucking spoiled me when it comes to my benchmark. But this absolutely gets the job done. So I'm throw another 4 in its face.
Yeah, I mean, like Pedro mentioned, it's a little unclear where enemy hitboxes are in relation to you at times. You're supposed to line up the shadows underneath them, but that gets kind of a bad idea that becomes a bad idea when there's a ton of enemies on you. But hey, I mean, Ethan knows his way around controllers. On the DualShock 4, I got correct button prompts. On the Steam controller, everything worked out of the box. It's the auto magic of FNA. So I can't really complain about that, aside from, sometimes I kind of wish that you could just move around with the analog stick, because if your angle is off on the, or D-pad rather, if your angle is off on the analog stick, and you're walking down a narrow bridge, you will fall off and lose health, and that just gets really fucking annoying. So not enough to ding at a chair, so it gets 4.
Yeah. It's FNA. It gives you the option to remap all the keys, and I never really felt like the controls were an impediment to making progress in Charlie Murder, and it basically worked out of the box with the mistress over here, so 4 chairs.
All right, well, that is 4 chairs for control. Let's wrap this up. Ben, did you have fun with Charlie Murder? Jolly Murder?
What I really like most about the original Serious Sam games, stay with me here, is that they came from a time when you could give absolutely zero fucks and just make the game you wanted to play. Fortunately, with the ease of self-publishing, kind of has brought back a little bit of that magic. Case in point, that's right, what we're talking about, Charlie Murderman. It's like Battletoads, Guitar Hero, and a brawler had sex, yo. And instead of a guitar-playing frog with anger issues, you end up with what I like to call, throwing some air quotes around this, just a fuck-around game. And that's basically any game that's going to require like 80% or less of your attention while still managing to keep you hella engaged. And it's something you have a conversation online or anything along that while still having fun in the game. You get your mindless brawling, but what makes Charlie Murder genuinely fun is, you know, Mr. Murderpants, it just pulls it off by having just a little bit of something for everyone, because you do have that brawling, but you have upgradable stats, the ability to juggle stats if you like doing that shit. It has crafting in its own way, craft beering. I get it. It's kind of funny. And some legit strategy. You know, if you're utilizing your defensive and anarchy abilities, it's all in there. It's this amalgam of like kind of sort of neat. It's amazing to see them pull it off, because normally when you take the kitchen sink approach, you end up with some funky shit. Here's the thing. You know, you can always tell when the development team behind a game had genuine fun during that game's creation, because it bleeds into your final product. And I gotta say this, Charlie Murder bleeds in spades. Now, if you're looking for a brass tacks, a simple sentence to convince your friends, your cat, whoever, what they should think about this game, just give it to them right there. I'm going to say this. I mean, if you're looking for something to kill a little bit of time, well, kind of, sort of, doing something else, Charlie Murder's definitely worth a look. You might want to hold off until some of the bugs get squished with the multiplayer stuff, but if you have 4 controllers and a Steam box laying around, it's priced to sell, $9.99. Yeah, do it. I'll give it a solid 3 cheers. Kind of liked it.
Yeah, it's a competent brawl. It's a commonly done brawler with some nice flavor and a decent sense of humor. The combat's all right. It's a little flaky at times due to the attacks not lining up properly, and also enemies like to marshal you towards the corner and then get you in a fucking loop where you stand up and they hit you down, you stand up, hit you down, and then you're like, fuck, and you hit Alt F4. If Flibit could start the online multiplayer, though, I think this could easily get 4 cheers in the fun category. I mean, it is pretty fun to beat the hell out of your friends while you're trying to get the games in sync. But yeah, and if you didn't see my end of it, but you may have saw some shadows of people just teleporting around a bunch during the network multiplayer. I did not get a chance to text local multiplayer, but I'm pretty sure that works fine, because this is something that the game natively supports to begin with. The palette cleanser segments, the Guitar Heroes and the Battletoads-esque vehicle segments are not that difficult, but they do provide an ice break from the brawler action, except for that fucking Kraken fight. My God. Because your targeting reticule just moves so fucking slow, and you got to juggle from back to forth, and there's just not enough time to react. And it gets really, really, really annoying. You need a couple people there. Otherwise, this would just take for fucking ever. The character progression stuff is also pretty good, too, because your first instinct would be, oh, well, I just want to focus on one stat, dump everything into attack, everything into defense, whatever. But then you get the thing where a lot of the cool items that give you some neat after effects do have stat requirements. So you're going to need to do some stat juggling. The character progression stuff is also pretty decent. There are lots of abilities. You don't have to put too much thought into it. You just got to pick ones that sound cool. And for the most part, they work pretty well, except for counter. I could never seem to get that to work. But it spices up the gameplay when it starts to get monotonous. I had fun playing Charlie Murder. I think once the network multiplayer bugs get squished, this would be a really, really awesome game to play with your friends. Either way, it still gets 3 cheers.
Well, as far as single player goes, it took me about 9 hours to finish the game in normal mode. Then you can keep playing in chaos mode. That's their version of New Game Plus. But at that point, and even though I was level 28 or 29, enemies became so strong, I felt like it'd be easier to tear through a punching bag with cotton candy gloves than actually make progress. Now, if you want to get the good ending in the first run, you either get a friend to equip the relic items that you need in order to summon the final boss proper, or you need to grind your way up to level 30 or 32, I can't remember which one it was, that lets you unlock the third layer of the relic equipping skill. So I'm not sure if I'm going to bother to go back to the normal difficulty just to see the good ending. I might, but right now I don't feel like it. I'm not saying that to imply that the game wasn't fun, because it was very, very fun. Combat gets a little button mashy in some sequences and boss fights, but I never really felt like I wasn't making an impact. For as little damage as I dealt, it still did those freeze frames. It still sent enemies flying all the way across the screen. And for all those times I've bitched and moaned about combat not feeling particularly meaty, Charlie Murder quells all my complaints in that regard. It would have been better if I didn't feel like I had the need to grind in order to be able to get the good ending, or if the enemies didn't feel so overpowered in New Game Plus. This, of course, in single player. In multiplayer, that's not the issue. The big issue in multiplayer is the amount of progress stalling bugs that kept Jordan from progressing through certain area transitions. And yes, I'll echo what Jordan and Ven already said. Fix those online multiplayer issues, and this is easily a 4-chair game for the fun. But as it currently stands, it only gets 3.
All right, well, that gets 3 games for the CHAIRQUISITION. I see what you did there. Yeah, this is 3 chairs for fun. Tallies up to a 3-chair game. It's pretty good. I'd recommend it. What about you guys?
The price, it's very ambitious to take something that was not online multiplayer to begin, and to move it to that, almost pulled it off. Now, I'm fully confident that Flibit will patch yo shit and eventually get it in a fluid working state. So, looking forward to that. At the price, maybe you just want to pick it up to fuck around. Like I said, multiplayer party game, it will do that.
Yeah, and even if you're not picking it up for the multiplayer, I've come to realize that Ska Studios, I like their games, because this one came out in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. The other one they released recently, Vampire Dishwasher, or Dishwasher, the Vampire Smile, whatever it's called.
Vampire the Dishwasher washing.
Whatever it's called. And Salt and Sanctuary, they all feel very similar, and I like all of them. I think I'm a Ska Studios fanboy. Now, it would be really awesome if Flibit could fix the multiplayer, though. That would just be the proverbial cherry on the cake.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo that, and for a little different reason. If Flibit can actually figure out a way to combine the fabled local multiplayer and network multiplayer, that would be pretty freaking nuts, because games like Towerfall, there were a lot of F&A games that would be really, really, really fun if I could play them with people not in my house. And I'm really hoping he can pull that off, because that would just be amazing.